problems that I had trying to get stuff up.
Yeah, you're stressed until the last second here.
It's okay.
Now you're not stressing.
It's public access. Nobody expects us to be professional. Plus, we got all these fancy graphics, which I'm sure will pop up again anytime.
Well,
there's a cool one that goes across the bottom that's got both of our names, and it just says like the Atheist Experience.
It's better to look marvelous than be marvelous.
I guess. Anyway, we're live. Today is Sunday, June 15th, 2008. It's Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to all of you fathers out there. And see, that was almost it.
Okay.
We're having a lot of fun. There it is. Look, it says Don Baker and Matt Dillahunty. And that's who's here. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty, and this is Don Baker.
Good to be here.
Back again after a 4-week absence, just like normal.
No, I was actually...
was it your week? It was your week that we skipped?
Yep.
Yes, for studio renovations, to give us all this nifty new stuff.
Right.
And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned
we keep our rotation going regardless of...
Yeah, we'll just skip a week. We've got these nifty new HD robotic cameras, and we're all getting... basically, it seems the more technology we add, the more things there are for us to screw up. But we'll have everything sorted out here by the time that we replace this equipment, I promise. So, we're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday, just like we did this morning at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, beginning at 11:30, except for the first Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center, beginning at around 12:30, but you want to get there 12:15-ish. I don't have the info for the July lecture.
We have, I can't remember, we have a UT professor, I can't remember his name, and he's going to be talking about...
Pseudoscience.
Pseudoscience.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're looking forward to that, and we'll have more information, and there'll be something up on the website as well. As I mentioned, this is a live public access call, where there's no way we'd screw up this much if we were, pre-recording it. We'll have the telephone number for you shortly. We do take live calls, and we encourage conversation with people in the Austin area. It's the whole reason we're here. The audio portion of the show is available as a download, as a podcast, and individually downloaded. And the video is available at Google Video. For more information, you can go to the ACA website, www.atheist-community.org, or the Atheist Experience website, www.atheist-experience.com. You can get there from both of them. There's an archive list up there. In addition, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's PROPHETS. And there are actually little graphic things for each one of these, but you don't have to put them up now. We can put them up whenever. There's the Nonprofits one. I know, they were in there hitting page down. Where did Matt hide this thing? It's really my fault. When Frank wasn't here, I resorted.
I think the problem is you're doing too much back there, and then you're here when stuff plays.
It's okay. It's fun. It's all good fun. And as I mentioned, we're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, dedicated to supporting the atheist community in the Austin area and church-state separation. Because we've now released the program on Google Video, we're hearing from people from around the world, including a contingent of fans in Australia that I'll keep waving to because you guys rock. But
hello down there.
We have an email address. It is tv@atheist-community.org. If you don't get through on the telephone today, or if you're watching it and it's not live, or you don't want to get through on the phone, you can email that. And it goes to myself, most of the co-hosts, some of the people behind the scenes. We cannot promise to answer every single email that comes in, but we try to answer a lot of them, and we definitely read all of them. If you want to get beyond the spam filters, though, you'll need to put in the subject line NPR for Nonprofits Radio, or AETV for Atheist Experience TV. That'll make sure that we're more likely to see it, and it won't get eaten by our junk filters, because the amount of junk mail that we get is just staggering.
You get a ton of mail, just in general, right?
Yeah, well, it all gets filtered to one address. But anyway, there's a frequently asked questions portion at the website, www.atheist-community.org. You can go there to find out some of the frequently asked questions, and just recently somebody emailed us a correction on our frequently asked question page, because there was something that was phrased really poorly, which was like, the question was, do you guys have guests on your show? And the answer was, yes, but if you're a Christian, we're not interested, but we are interested in scientists and philosophers and things like that.
Right.
And somebody's like, well, you don't think Christians can be? Yes. Yeah. Yes, we do. It was worded poorly. What we're really saying is that if you are an apologist coming on to present a religious opinion, we're not interested in having you on as a guest. You are, however, encouraged to call in and have a discussion. The reason for that is that there are tons of religious shows on television, including entire networks full of it. Public access is filled to the brim with religious programming, and this is a we're not apologetic about it at all. It is an atheist program. But one of the things that we do, that we have people call in, is I'm interested in finding out what you believe and why you believe it. I don't care what you claim to know. I don't want to misrepresent your beliefs. If you have arguments for or against the existence of God or something supernatural or whatever wacky thing, whatever wacky thing that you happen to believe that we may disagree with. No, seriously, if you tell us what you believe and why, we can at least have a conversation. And you might be surprised that there are things that we agree about, and including we may be able to agree to a certain extent on some of the propositions that you make. But I don't want to come on here and say, well, Baptists believe this, because even though I was a Baptist, it's really not fair for me to, even at that time, to speak for all the Baptists.
And I have yet to meet two Christians or two believers that believe the same thing.
Yeah.
So if you make a blanket statement like that, you're basically going to miss the nuance that an individual has, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to say, oh, well, it's not what I believe.
So until somebody tells us specifically what they believe, we attempt to either make kind of higher level statements, which unfortunately lumps people into one bucket or another. Obviously we're going to say that theists believe in a God, but what the characteristics are, that's up to you. And now that I've sidetracked that enough, you can email in, you can call in. We'll have the number up for you shortly, and those are things that we'd like to talk about as well. For ACA members, coming up this coming Saturday is the Solstice Party. There's more information on the website. Thanks to Mike Swift for hosting that, and we're looking forward to a good time as always. That is, unlike a lot of our other events, that's a members only and invitation thing. But we do host, in addition to both of the programs, the lecture series, we have dinner after the program. We'll be going to El Arroyo this evening. We're on the air till 4:30. We go to dinner around 5 o'clock. It's open. All of our events, except for the Solstice Party thing, are open to any atheist or atheist-friendly person. You don't have to be a member. As long as you're not coming down to preach, proselytize, or provoke, you're welcome. We also have happy hour every Thursday at the Dog and Duck Pub at 17th and Guadalupe. All of those events are open to the public. And one of the reasons that we put on the lecture series is, and we cover all kinds of topics, not just pseudoscience or religious-based things, but we've had lectures on education and science and things like that. It is, in fact, a public service. And even though there are things deeply ingrained in each of us that we may disagree on, there are certainly common areas where we can come together. I realize that not every theist or believer is wants to make this a theocracy. So there are believers who are strongly supportive of church-state separation issues, and that's fine. Reverend Barry Lind.
Well, as you should be.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a matter of that's fine. Congratulations, you're one of the
That's the correct answer.
You actually support freedom and rights. Yeah. That's fine. You can do that if you want to.
We can make a little stronger statement than that, right?
Yes. We love you. We just happen to disagree with you on this God thing. And maybe a couple other things. So speaking of ministers.
Ministers, okay.
You wanted to talk about one.
I did, but you want to talk about the Pride Festival first, a little bit, or not?
There was a Pride Festival?
There was a Pride Festival.
Oh, that might explain the sunburn with the...
Yeah, we both have red faces, and there's a reason for that.
It was hot and sunny, and we're going to make some changes for next year.
We're going to turn the sun down a notch.
Well, one thing is that there was a group who was passing out the little fans that said "Gay by God," and of course, I didn't take one because, well, I wasn't made by God, as far as I'm concerned. And I also don't happen to be gay. So neither one of the words fit me, so I had to get a State Farm insurance fan.
Okay.
But there were people who came up to our booth during the day and said, you guys don't happen to have fans, do you? Because I'm gay, but I'm not by God, so maybe I'd like an atheist fan.
Right.
So fans are on the list for possible things.
So let's back up a little bit. There was this Gay Pride Festival, and it's a community event, and there were 103 vendors or more there down at Auditorium Shores yesterday, and it's well attended by both the gay community here in Austin and the greater community. And the reason we go to it is because we view gay rights as a church-state separation issue primarily. A lot of the sort of trouble that gays face as far as getting married and having jobs and serving in the military. These sorts of things are ultimately based in religion, and this is a perfect example of church-state separation where you're welcome to your religious opinions, but you're not welcome to use the government to inflict them on other people. So, gay people are people just like everybody else, and we recognize that, and we have a lot of gay members in our group. Not a huge number, and it's not a big deal because nobody cares, right? Yeah. We're just happy to be atheists. So
that's one of the things. Is somebody came up at the booth and they were like, "So you guys have meetings and do things?" Yeah. And women are welcome? Yeah. At the time, there were only a few of us guys sitting there. Throughout the day, there were other female members of the ACA who were there participating as well. She just happened to walk up when there weren't any. And I was like, yeah, it's not an all-boys club. And she's like, well, are gays and lesbians welcome? I was like, we're at Pride Festival. I don't care who you sleep with. Right. You're welcome to come to anything we want, right, or any of our events that you'd like to.
So that's just something we do to kind of put ourselves out there a little bit, make people aware. A lot of folks came up and it's like, oh, I didn't even know there was an atheist group here in Austin. It's like, yeah, well, we're actually one of the second or third largest or second or third most active gay and atheist group in the United States. Yeah. And we're pretty active. New York atheists are pretty big. And anyway, so that's something we did.
They've got a radio show now too. And
yeah. So we're among them.
It's a disease. It's spreading. We're here to take over the world. Right. We're going to just make it corrupt and immoral. Sacrifice babies and allow gays to get married.
Yeah, we were joking with somebody about sacrificing babies, and she said, "Oh, just without me missing a beat. Oh, yeah, I do that too. I've done my share of that."
It's all true. We're all servants of Satan. Everything that your minister has tossed at you from the pulpit, no matter how crazy it sounded, it's all true. Atheists are just evil, immoral people who just want to destroy. I mean,
okay,
seriously,
right,
though, does that make any sense? That anybody would be, out to destroy the society that they live in?
Well, actually, that they that's part of the topic today. Believe it or not,
who would do such a thing? I've given you like Christian 18 segues now.
That's a good segue. All right. Well, today I wanted to talk about Reverend John Hagee, who has a ministry down in San Antonio. He's kind of a neighboring. I haven't been down there. I'd like to go sometime, just see what it's all about. He's got a church called the Cornerstone Church. Has about 1,800 members. But he has a broadcast thing, and he claims to have 4.5 million viewers around the world. So it's probably one of those things where you count everybody who could possibly ever turn on the TV, including the dead people, and you count them as your followers and watchers.
If that's the case, we've got him beat.
Yeah,
because we're on Google Video.
We're on the internet.
So we got 6 billion potential viewers.
We got you beat. We got the internet. So there. Anyway. So we got talking a while ago about politics and stuff, and one of the callers actually called in and said, hey, we got this Obama guy and this Reverend Wright thing, and they're trying to, tarball him with what Reverend Wright is saying and all this stuff. And gosh, McCain has been certainly associated with a lot of ministers like this Parsley guy. I don't think I have that handy. But and also he got an endorsement from John Hagee, and these guys have some pretty crazy religious beliefs. I mean, if you thought Reverend Wright was a nutcase, then take a look at these guys. This Parsley guy makes a living, no kidding. He sells prayer rugs or prayer towels that he has anointed and blessed, and you send in money. And you get one of these things in the mail, and then you're supposed to rub it on your leg if it's been aching, or put it on your wife if you want a divorce. I don't know what you're supposed to do with it, but it's basically a faith healing scam that's done by mail. And this is how this Parsley guy makes his money, and he's considered one of the spiritual advisors of John McCain, right? So, these politicians, really ought to think twice about when they associate with a minister, because these ministers have a lot of goofy stuff that they're promoting, a lot of skeletons in their closet and such. But I want to focus on Hagee because he's, while he's got a lot of nutcase stuff himself, in fact, I can touch on it briefly. There was this guy, this undercover reporter from the Rolling Stone magazine, who went and attended his church and posed as a believer. His name is Matt Taibbi, and he wrote an article in a book on this experience. The article is called "Jesus Made Me Puke," and it's about going into Hagee's ministry, and I guess they have some sort of program where you identify the demons in your life or the things that caused you injury in your past, and you're supposed to literally puke them out as a means of cleansing yourself and these sorts of things. And this crazy wacko stuff exists in all religions, and I would say in many ways it's less harmful than the prayer rug thing, because I think that the prayer rug thing, like a lot of faith healing, when you're turning to fake cures, you're avoiding going to something that really is going to be helpful to you. So this is rather mild on that sort of thing, but that's just a very small part of what Hagee's doing. Hagee is a very big Christian Zionist, and that's pretty much his defining characteristic, although there was this rather interesting snafu with the Catholics. And this gets back to the political thing, because what happened was the media focused quite a bit on the Reverend Wright thing, and was just playing these funky quotes from Reverend Wright over and over again. And he does have some wacky views, but generally he, in a real interview, can come off quite well. I watched him on Bill Moyer's show, and he was very articulate and knew what he was talking about. Anyway, so finally the media gave some attention to John McCain and such, and the backstory is kind of interesting. That it turns out that John McCain has said a number of things about Catholicism and the Catholic Church and its history, that it turns out that a guy by the name of is it Bill Donahue? No, the Catholic League guy.
Bill Donahue.
Yeah. Bill Donahue raised. So what happened was Bill Donahue got mad at the fact that this Hagee guy, who doesn't appear to like Catholics, was getting all this attention and wasn't getting any negative attention with the McCain endorsement. So he raised a stink. And so he brought up a bunch of stuff that John Hagee said about the Catholic Church. And I'm going to read some of the quotes. This is from a Catholic League for Religious and Civil Liberties press release, calling John Hagee a veteran bigot, which I just love this. This is too funny. But what's interesting is that pretty much everything, what this article is they quote a bunch of things that John Hagee says and then they say, "Isn't it awful?" more or less. But it turns out the things they quote are all true. So I'm kind of amused by it. I'm kind of tickled. So here are some Hagee quotes that they quoted. Quote, "Anti-Semitism in Christianity began with the statements of the early church fathers, including Eusebius, Cyril, Chrysostom, Augustine, Origen, Justin, and Jerome. This poisonous stream of venom came from the mouths of the spiritual leaders to virtually illiterate congregants sitting benignly in their pews listening to their pastors. They labeled the Jews as the Christ killers, plague carriers, demons, children of the devil, bloodthirsty pagans who look for innocent child during Easter the week to drink its blood, money-hungry Shylocks who are deceitful as Judas and was relentless." So this propaganda, if you will, from the early church, and as far as I know, this is true. They did do that. They did paint the Jews as pretty evil folks, and Christ killers and all that. So score one for Hagee. Second quote: "The Roman Catholic Church, which was supposed to carry the light of the gospel, plunged the world into the dark ages. ... The Crusaders were a motley mob of thieves, rapists, robbers, and murderers whose sins had been forgiven by the Pope in advance of the crusade. The brutal truth is that the Crusades were military campaigns of the Roman Catholic Church to gain control over Jerusalem from the Muslims and punish the Jews as an alleged Christ killers on the road to and from Jerusalem." So that's true. They went out to the Holy Lands, and anything that got in their way, these Jews are nearby, let's get them too. That was the sort of attitude of the Crusades, right? Please jump in if you see anything that's kind of misrepresenting. I think that's true. Third quote: the Spanish Inquisition was perhaps the most cynical plot in the black history of Catholicism, aimed at expropriating the property of wealthy Jews and converts to Spain for the benefit of the royal court and the Roman Catholic Church. That's also true. Now you might notice a theme here: Jews, Jews, Jews. Right? You might say that John Hagee is obsessed with Israel and Jews, and we'll find out why later. Here's another quote. Adolf Hitler attended the Catholic school and as a child and heard from the fiery anti-Semitic rantings from Chrysostom and Martin Luther. When Hitler became a global demonic monster, the Catholic Church and Pope Pius XI never, ever slightly criticized him. 12th. Pope Pius XII, called by many historians Hitler's Pope, joined Hitler in the infamous Concordat of Collaboration, which turned the youth of Germany over to Nazism. And the churches became the stage for the background of the bloodthirsty cry, Petrat Judah. Anyway, so on and on. There's more. But the Catholic League is saying John Hagee said all these horrible things, and all these horrible things happen to be true, which I just find hilarious. But what their point is that they have this nuance that they don't want to say that the Catholic Church had this as their purpose. So they want John Hagee to apologize for this very little thing. Yes, all this terrible crap happened, and it was really awful, but that wasn't really their purpose. Their purpose was to promote Jesus or something instead. So that's what the sort of apology they wanted from John Hagee, and he ended up giving it. He said, I want to express, John Hagee ended up apologizing, and this turned into a big controversy recently, and he said, I want to express my deep regret for any comments the Catholics have found hurtful, which is kind of a not so sincere apology. It's more of a, if you were offended, that's tough for you. I'm sorry that happened, but nothing I said was untrue. He never apologized of the truthfulness of anything he said, and the Catholic Church seemed to be, or the Catholic League seemed to be very happy. They said that the tone of Hagee's letter is sincere. So I kind of see this whole episode as sort of an agreement between thugs. We have the Catholic League who are just happy to turn a blind eye to the pedophilia and all the abuses and such. But boy, if you say anything bad about the Catholic Church, they're going to be on your case big time. And then we have John Hagee, who we'll see is a big Christian Zionist, and he's promoting the end times for money. And the two of them, they both have their thugs, and they're kind of agreeing in this episode of not to point out each other's failings. It seems so. So that's why we see the John Hagee and the Bill Donahue guy working it out. So the backstory of John Hagee really is having a lot more to do with this Christian Zionism thing. And I think to explain this, I need to do a digression. And by the way, let me mention very quickly that John Hagee and John McCain, they love each other because both of them want to blow up Iran. They both have that in the back of their mind as a very high on their agendas. Now, so Hagee says the coming nuclear showdown with Iran is a certainty. Israel and America must confront Iran's nuclear capability and their willingness to destroy Israel with nuclear weapons. For Israel to wait is a risk of committing national suicide. So that's a John Hagee quote. McCain's position I don't understand fully, but I think it has a lot to do with keeping the U.S. as a world-dominating force and making sure that there's not yet another group out there who we have to sort of take seriously, right? So it's much better if Iran doesn't have nuclear arms, because then we can shove them around a lot better. So I think that would be more of his slant on things. But it's a marriage of convenience that the two want to take Iran out. I personally don't think that that's a worthwhile goal, and I think that our war in the Middle East is complete nonsense and insanity. But that's another topic, and that's not so directly related to atheism, so I want to veer off of that. So let's talk about Zionism and Christian Zionism. Now, Zionism is really sort of this belief that the Jews who were dispersed through all the persecution throughout the Middle Ages and throughout the modern ages have been dispersed and persecuted, that they should have a homeland. And generally, that's not a bad idea, right? You have this people with a single ethnic identity. They should potentially be together, have a community, and do these sorts of things, right? And there's this Zionist movement really picked up steam right after World War II. Albert Einstein was a big Zionist, right? He wanted to see the Jews have a homeland. He didn't believe that the Jews had any special place in the world, that sort of thing, but he thought that was a good idea to having a homeland. And this actually caused, after the Holocaust and these sorts of things, a movement to create a homeland, and it ended up being in the founding of the State of Israel.
On the other hand, they could grow up and disregard all this God gave us this land nonsense,
right,
and join those of us who'd like to just say, you know what, we're all human beings.
Right.
Let's start with that, knock down some of the barriers.
Right.
What do you want with a crappy little piece of desert anyway?
Well, so
I mean,
there's this big issue.
If I was Jewish, would I rather live in Austin or Jerusalem? Man, Austin rocks. Beautiful hill country, places to golf and swim and outdoors.
So there's this big question now of whether this should be a homeland or a biblical mandated homeland. And this is I think where one of the key questions, right? Is the Jews, if you look back in your Bible, there was this incident where Abraham goes to sacrifice his son Isaac to God, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of I think there's a lot of interesting moral lessons there, right? The moral lesson from the Bible is, if God tells you to do something and it involves killing your kid, listen to God. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you love your kid or love humanity or that it's wrong to kill someone. Go and obey God. That's the moral lesson there, right? But Abraham went to do this, and at the last minute, God spared the child, right? But Abraham was praised for his willingness to do this, and I don't think that he is being praised at all for his ability to deceive God, right? So morally, in my mind, this is exactly the same as if he did kill his child, right? So in return,
well, what it tells us is that from Abraham's point of view, killing your child is something that God would ask and that should be obeyed. This gets respun so often with, well, God showed up at the end and saved him. Okay, yeah, I've heard the story too. So what?
It's not very important part of the story.
I mean, granted, it's all fiction, but if God shows up at the end and saves the kid, that says nothing. The whole purpose was to test Abraham's quote-unquote faith, which I'd rather translate as blind obedience. Because you've got a God here who says, hey, I want you to kill your son. And Abraham says, okay.
Sign me up.
And drags him off and goes to...
grumble a little bit.
How does this work? How is this a morally just or superior God or anything worthy of worship or reverence or anything? If some voice told me or something that I perceived to be a higher power came and told me, hey, go kill your son, go screw yourself. Tell me why I should. What gives you the authority to do this? This is all about the mindset that I brought you into this world, I can take you out. I mean, it's funny when Cosby says it, but if you say that this is some kind of just principle of any sort of intelligent higher being, you're wrong. You have bought into this unethical, immoral system. And how dare you accuse somebody else of being morally inferior because they point that out? Oh, well, God would never do that. He did, according to your beliefs. I mean, you believe he did this. Well, God never would have actually let Abraham kill it. Well, it doesn't matter. Abraham believed he did.
Yeah, it's a gang initiation thing is how I view it.
Do you really think Abraham said, well, God says he wants me to kill my son, but I know God would never do that, so I'll just play along. I'm sure he'll rescue him at the end. I mean, come on! I mean, I understand that there are apologists out there that like to soften all the offensive, stupid, immoral, unjust things in the Bible. Come on, don't treat the rest of us like we're stupid. Wake up. The story is about, will you obey me no matter what? That's it. That's the story. And that's what Abraham's rewarded for, and that's why the Jews think they're special. They're right, God's chosen people.
So as a result of this, Abraham became the exalted, patriarch of the Jews, and God
gave him pseudo-monotheistic religions.
Right, and God, as a blessing or as a help to his new gang member, gave him a whole bunch of land. Right, so. And this is really, you have to understand this story. This is called the Abrahamic covenant, right? That the Jews got all this land in exchange for, Abraham doing these things. You have to understand this to understand anything at all about Middle East politics, right? Because it is this very land that the Jews today think, or the believing Jews today think that they have a right to, that God gave them this land. And to make matters worse, we have a whole bunch of Christians here in the United States that see this as, a big part of the sort of biblical prophecy playing out. And so you have a movement in the United States called Christian Zionism, which is really sort of taking the Zionism, Jews should have a homeland, but it's amplifying it. It's really putting a very nice, happy, smiley face on the idea that Jesus is going to return, and this is a necessary step to that to happen, that the Jews have this homeland and take all of Judea.
Yeah, Jesus is going to come back and save us all. But before he can do that, we need to have a war in Israel. And before we can do that, we need to be able to reestablish Israel. So we're going to pretend like we like the Jews to get them their homeland so that somebody can bomb them so that Jesus can come back for us.
Right.
Woo, you guys are love your neighbor sorts for sure.
Right. So there's this very, very weird relationship between the Christian Zionists here in the United States and the Jews, and especially the hardcore Jews there in Israel, right? Where they're sort of using each other, right?
Oh yeah.
They'll say that they're friends, but it's really more of a friends with benefits sort of thing, right?
This may be the only thing,
other, right?
This may be the only thing on the entire planet that is truly Judeo-Christian.
Yes.
Everywhere else you hear that label, it's a crock.
Right.
There's no such thing as Judeo-Christian values or Judeo-Christian principles. Right. There is Judeo-Christian Zionism, and that's about it.
Right, there is this. So how are they using each other? Well, the U.S., especially because of this Christian Zionist movement, is sending a whole pile of aid to Israel, and the amount of aid is just insane. It is, the U.S. spends $108 billion a year of U.S. tax dollars on aid to Israel. Okay, that's a lot of money. And in addition, a lot of Christians send a lot of money over to Israel. And some of it is welcome, and some of it is genuinely friendly, wonderful stuff. They're sending over, food and blankets and helping out people find jobs and these sorts of things. But a lot of it is aimed at, converting Jews to Christianity, which they don't like too much. And a lot of it was with this backstory that I want to get into a little deeper later in the show, is this idea that, well, these folks are actors in our little fantasy that we're going to go have orgasms with Jesus, and you guys are going to get killed as a part of the process. So that's what the Christians get out of it.
No.
No? Okay.
What Hagee's advocating is not this separationist. He actually advocates that Jews themselves will also be saved under the old covenant. So Hagee's
those that convert.
No. They don't have to convert.
Okay. Well, there's this 144,000 number too, but I don't think it's all the Jews.
It is.
Okay.
They're under the old covenant. Hagee buys into that.
Okay.
That's how that, or at least he claims to, which is how he can play along.
Okay. But let me just counter by saying that, Hagee might be in the minority there. I think that a lot of Christian Zionists in the U.S. do think that a lot of the Jews are going to be killed as part of this, right?
Oh, no. They're all convinced that they're going to be killed.
Okay.
I'm talking about whether or not the Jews get to enjoy an afterlife.
Oh, okay.
Hagee's position is that there are Christians who think Jews are going to go to hell, just like there are Baptists who think Catholics are going to go to hell, and vice versa, because there's one and only pathway, and you guys got it wrong. And the Jews are going to go to hell because, well, they were the chosen people, and they turned their backs on God and killed his son when he came here, or actually it was him and his son as the same. Never mind, Trinity is nonsense. But because they turned their back on it, that they're all doomed, that their covenant with God is null and void. Hagee's of the position, along with some others, that their old covenant is still binding. That as long as they keep to the old Mosaic law, they'll get to enjoy their paradise. They're still going to get the shit bombed out of them while we're waiting for Jesus to come.
Right.
But,
Well, and I guess it should be said here for folks that are not too familiar with this that the Jews, by and large, don't believe in an afterlife, right? Their notion of heaven is kind of absent from the Old Testament, and it's really a sort of Christian creation. Anyway, so these two groups are using each other. The Jews in Israel right now are welcoming all this money coming in and all this help and such. They resent the attempt to convert them, and they think that this whole idea of them being, chewed up and spat out and rivers of blood and all that stuff in this apocalyptic idea is just complete nonsense. But it's expedient. They don't believe it's going to happen, so they don't see any major problem with some crazy people believing that, right? I think that's kind of the attitude. In the U.S., the idea is that we have this very crazy thing where we have. In a poll, in a 2007 poll done in early 2007, 25% of Americans think that Jesus Christ will return in the year 2007.
Yeah,
okay?
It's kind of like...
So Americans are fucking crazy, right?
Yeah. It's kind of like, I'd like to buy a new Ferrari, and I can't really afford it myself, but some people out there have been given a message from God that... if I get a new Ferrari, I will wrap it around a tree and have an experience where I will become a Christian again, and I will have this experience, and I will spread the love and joy of Jesus to the planet. So, all of you who've received that message from God, it would be in your best interest to send me money to get this Ferrari in order to promote this end result. And that's what's happening.
It's all for the greater good, of course.
It's exactly what's happening with Zionism. We'd like to rebuild our own homeland, so we welcome your money, even though you think that you're giving us the money so that we can ultimately be destroyed for your glory. Sorry, I'm sorry. I don't mean to call you hypocrites. It's not for your glory. It's for the glory of Jesus. Do you really think that the Jewish population is interested in glorifying Jesus? No, they want your money. They want a homeland, like I'd like to have a Ferrari.
Any practical person would think you're nuts, right?
If I do wrap it around a tree and Jesus comes down and saves me, well, okay, then we'll talk.
You'll be open-minded.
But in the meantime, you can send your checks or money order. No, I'm kidding. I don't want your money.
Okay, so
let's pause for a second because I think this may actually be a long distance that's been on hold.
Yeah, we can take a little break.
So is it Michael?
Yes.
How you doing? Are you long distance?
Yes, I'm calling from Oklahoma.
I knew you would be. How you doing?
Doing all right. First of all, I just wanted to say great job on the show. I listen to both shows all the time. I'm eagerly awaiting the next non-profits. The month-long wait is kind of tough, going through withdrawals.
Oh man, read a book. Read a book. Take some time. Go out and see the sites. We'll get you a fix on the 28th.
Okay, but also I wanted to comment. Now I don't know. You're in Texas. Did you have to deal with a religious viewpoint anti-discrimination law at all? Not
yet, but we will. I can almost guarantee it because Louisiana's dealing with it, Florida's dealing with it, and you guys have dealt with it.
Yes, and I was going to ask, have you heard anything about Sally Kern?
Yes, and I can't say anything about her without taking the rating of this show down a notch, despite what Don just said.
Right. Yeah. Well, she's pretty much. I don't think she's. I don't think she's going to get reelected, but I don't know.
She is a vile, despicable, hateful human being who has no consideration for anybody else. She's out to promote her own agenda. She hates gays. She hates atheists. She's a little troll, and she. We can't. I can't stand her. Every time I see her name, I just want to puke.
Yeah. That she appears in opinion in editorials in the newspaper. But anyway,
yes, because it's so wise to give voice to these people.
Yeah, she introduced the Religious Viewpoint Anti-Discrimination Act, and it passed the House, and then at first it got shuffled off to some sort of committee where it was expected to go and die, but then someone else
resurrected
another bill with that language in it, and it passed the Senate, and it made it all the way to the governor. Fortunately, a little bit over a week ago, the governor did veto that bill.
Yes.
But what's really frightening is, had it been another governor, like I don't want to make this about like party lines or anything, but anyone that a governor that might pander to the religious right.
You mean like our present governor here in Texas, Rick Perry, who, by the way, is welcome to come on the television program.
Maybe somebody like him, but
he is welcome to come on. He can't hear me. I was going to say that, by the way, since I haven't announced this in a week, Rick Perry, you are welcome to come on the Atheist Experience television show and explain why it is that you hate atheists and secularists. Since you're comfortable going on the 700 Club to say that we're some kind of disease that's poisoning America, I'd like to, as one of your constituents, as somebody who you're supposed to represent, I'd like you to explain it to me. But anyway, back to you, Michael.
But yeah, and a lot of people wrote into the governor. I was one of them to urge him to veto this bill, and he did. So it was a
tense moment.
Do what?
It was a tense moment.
Yeah, I mean, it should never have got that far in the first place.
Right.
But I just kind of wanted to highlight
is maybe talk very briefly about what it does, because some of our listeners may not know what that's about. We should give a little context.
You want to go ahead and do that, Michael?
Yeah. Well, basically, the Religious Viewpoint Anti-Discrimination Act would allow students in school to give an answer, like, say, in a science class, that jives with their religion, and then the science teacher would have to count that correct. Like, if the question was, how old is the Earth? And, the science books say 4.5 billion years, but, little Johnny says 6,000 because that's what my pastor says, then they have to count that right, because if they didn't, that would be discrimination.
Yes. Yeah. And there are other versions of this in other places. I don't know if the Oklahoma one includes this, that would actually allow teachers to express quote-unquote alternative viewpoints. So even though teaching creationism in a science classroom is against the law, this is another way for them to try and get in. They tried this crap in Dover with the intelligent design movement and of pandas and people, and now they're trying to introduce legislation under anti-discrimination. It's just like we talked about a million times, where somebody's, if you're hitting somebody over the head with a board, it's not unfair discrimination for us to take the board away and tell you to stop. And yet they just keep going and finding a new stick. And now they've got legislation, these anti-discrimination. This is my sincere religious viewpoint, so it would be wrong for a government official like a teacher to mark my answer wrong. No. The teacher's not saying that you're wrong or that you're wrong to have that belief. The teacher's teaching the curriculum. And the curriculum, the science, the evidence, the, what's that word? Reality is that the Earth is much closer to 4.5 billion years old than it is to 6,000 years old. And little Johnny doesn't get to write 6,000 no matter how strongly he believes it. Because we're not testing what Johnny believes. We're testing how well Johnny understands the curriculum, period.
Yeah, and the evidence that we've gathered through science and reason.
Yeah.
Right?
So, I mean, it's great that the governor of Oklahoma vetoed this. I wonder if they're going to try and push it back through. Do you know?
Well, I haven't heard anything else about this bill. Right now it's dead. It doesn't mean they're not going to try to push it through in the future, but I don't know. I'll be keeping an eye on that, that's for sure.
Well, these people, you have to admire their perseverance, right? And they've got that down. And you have to admire how much money
if somebody keeps running into a wall and hitting it, do you have to really admire the perseverance that encourages you to do that?
I'm trying to say something nice.
I'm trying real hard. And this is where Don and I differ, because this is an area where I don't have to try to say anything nice at all. I don't have anything against the people, but the ideas that have poisoned and polluted their mind, that encourage them to engage in this sort of attempt to legislate their own personal beliefs onto everybody else. I have no respect for that. I don't have to play nice with that. We don't have to open up science classrooms to alternative theories to support somebody's religious belief any more than we need to allow flat earth people to come in and teach an alternate viewpoint in geology classrooms. We don't need to allow our medical schools to have alternate time with reflexologists and homeopathists. Sorry, you either got the scientific evidence to support your claim or you don't. It matters what's supported by evidence and not what just happens to be your personal belief. And so if you hear more about what's going on there, if they try to resurrect this, you'll have to give us a call back and let us know.
Oh, I will. But I really just wanted to bring this up to highlight the importance of people being involved with government, with their representatives and stuff, because we have legislators that are trying to push this agenda, and if we don't keep an eye on this and try to stop it, then they're just going to walk all over us.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody, it's the time. People say, well, why are you guys so vocal, you atheists? Can't you just let everybody have their beliefs and sit down and be quiet? We kind of tried that for a century or so, and we went from a progressive society where free thought was at least tolerated, if not respected, amongst people, where progress was the rule, and it resulted in these great advances in civilization, increases in human understanding. And now, because we've sat quietly and allowed these religious people to weasel their way in to promote these backward views, we've lost ground. I'm not going to say progress has halted, but we've definitely lost ground, and there's no longer any excuse for people to sit quietly by and let it happen. It's time to let your voice be heard and say, you know what, we're standing up advocating reason. We're standing up advocating evidence, sound argument. This is not purely we want the world to be atheist. That's nonsense. It's just as silly as those people who say that removing a Ten Commandments monument promotes atheism. No, it doesn't. If you look out on the lawn of the Capitol, there's a Ten Commandments monument there. It shouldn't be there, but is the foot square piece of ground next to it that has nothing on that, is that promoting atheism? I mean, is a blank piece of paper the atheist Bible? That's crazy. The absence of promoting religion and supporting those things is not atheism. It's not some anti-dogma. It's a hands-off secular approach. We live in a secular country with a secular constitution. That's the way things are supposed to be. That's the way church-state separation was intended to be. And anybody who says different is trying to sell you something. They're probably trying to sell you a prayer cloth.
We were talking about that earlier in the show.
But thanks a lot for the call, Michael. I appreciate it, and it's very important to keep people up to date and let them know, because Texas science standards are going to be coming up for review soon, and we're going to be expecting a lot of people to be vocally supportive of 21st century science and reason, and not allow us to keep taking steps backwards. But I want to let Don get back to what he was talking about with John Hagee, but we appreciate the call.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for taking my call. Keep up the good work.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Michael.
Thanks.
Yeah, I guess as a reminder, we're a live call-in show. It's Father's Day.
It is.
June 15th?
Yes, June 15th.
People are welcome to call. I'm going to talk a little bit more, but you're welcome to call, and we can talk about... eventually I want to get to what I think about this rapture stuff is, what I think about it, which isn't very
Let's
pretty.
go. You got 40 minutes.
We've got 40 minutes. Well, okay.
We got about 40 minutes left. And as a reminder, in addition to the phone number that's on your screen now, if you don't get through or don't want to, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. You can also visit the website for more information from our frequently asked questions page, which has just been updated to be less silly. And after the show's over, we get together for dinner at El Arroyo on 5th Street. They'll probably put the address up on the screen a little bit later on. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us. You don't have to be a member to attend at all.
Yeah.
So let's go back and do some more on
Well, the caller brought up a point of, gosh, these people are very persistent. They're very powerful. They've got this machinery going in multiple states doing all this stuff. And this really kind of points out something that I think relates to today's topic of John Hagee is there is a lot of machinery in the United States set up to push these evangelical ideas and these rapture ideas into government, right? I mean, let's start at the very basics. I mean, we've got a lot of voters here in the United States. I just quoted that 25% of Americans think that Jesus Christ will return in 2007. Of course, those same 25% of the people are probably voting for a candidate who wants to make that happen, right? And we don't currently have a candidate that has embraced those ideas. But in the last election, we certainly did. And those people, I think, made a big difference in that election. We have 15% of Americans voting based on U.S. foreign policy to Israel, right? For 15% of the Americans, that is the main issue, right? It's not the war, it's not the economy, it's not, education for your kids, it's not transportation, but no, it's Israel. It's getting...
lest anybody think that this 15% are American Jews. American Jews represent less than 1% of the population.
Right.
There are fewer Jews in America than there are atheists, and part of that is because... well, there's a lot of Jewish atheists as well in America, so
right.
They get crossover numbers.
Right. So those give you an idea of how many people in the United States are doing this, and they're voting based on this, and they're very motivated. These folks, and John Hagee has taken advantage of this. He has created a lobbying group called Christians United for Israel, CUFI, and it has become a very popular thing very quickly. It's well supported, well funded. People are attending their meetings in droves, and Hagee says he would like to see CUFI become, quote, the Christian version of AIPAC, which, referring to the vaunted pro-Israel group, rated second only in to the National Rifle Association as the most effective lobby in Washington. So if you have two very effective lobbies going and urging your Congress critters to go up and blow Iran, or go and do crazy stuff in the Middle East based on biblical prophecy.
I think you meant blow up Iran.
What did I say?
Blow Iran.
I meant to say blow up.
We were at the Pride Festival yesterday. It's bound to happen.
We were working all those sexual entendres all day long.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But so that, a little Freudian slip, a little pink one. Anyway.
Okay, so...
sorry about that. Can't
if you can't have fun about sex...
Right, something's wrong.
Sorry. And on Father's Day, too. I mean, if anything, you can't get to be a father without it.
Yep.
So...
There you go. Relates to today. Anyway, so we have Hagee creating this Christians United for Israel, and it's manned by a guy by the name of David Brogg, who happens to be, a Jew, which is interesting. It's being supported by Lieberman, who's a pretty famous out there Jew senator. And apparently, one of the tough things that poor Brogg has to deal with is, this questions about. Despite his best efforts, Brogg remains dogged by questions about evangelical reasons for backing Israel. Hagee has told his supporters that supporting Israel is a biblical imperative and proudly pronounces his belief that Israel is the future site of the rapture. Hagee even revealed events that most Israelis would describe as tragic. For instance, in his 1996 book, The Beginning of the End, Hagee described the murder of Israel Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin as a fulfillment of prophecy and suggested admiration for Rabin's assassin, Yigael Amir. So Hagee's a nutcase, and so this they have this problem of sort of suppressing that and hiding that fact in Washington so that they can get more support for their efforts. Well, where does this nutcase stuff come from? It comes from the Bible, and it comes from, I want to emphasize this pretty hard, is that, you know, if you go and read the Bible, you get one version of things, but there's a lot of ministers out there that want to spin the Bible, want to you know, interpret things a certain way and so on. And so you find people pulling passages from various places and saying, oh, this means X, Y, Z, give me money. That sort of thing. So that's pretty much what's happened here, was this rapture stuff is actually takes passages out of various books of the Bible that were written at various different times. We have Daniel, Revelations, Thessalonians, and some of the other books, and they've been woven together into a narrative about this is how the end times is going to happen, and this is how the end of the world is going to happen. And there really isn't support for this. I mean, the people writing the Bible didn't intend this, right? It's a modern interpretation. It was an interpretation proposed by a traveling minister by the name of Darby. I forget his first name. You might remember it. But this is like the turn of the to the 20th century. So this is over 100 years ago. And this idea has become known as dispensationalism, the idea that the Bible is broken up into 7 eras or dispensations where we have different types of interactions with God and different sort of purposes for these different eras. And we're living in the last one according to this, and this is when Jesus is going to come back, right? We have the era of Adam, we have the era of Moses, we have the era of, you know, all these sorts of things. These are dispensations. And so this whole movement that Hagee is part of is called premillennial dispensationalism, which basically is a very specific interpretation of this idea about when the order of events. So premillennial has to do with when the rapture is going to be relative to the tribulation, right? So all of this is complete nonsense BS as far as I'm concerned. But
I may be wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't know enough about Darby to say, but the real proponent of
was Schofield.
Was Schofield for
Yep.
all this apocalyptic.
Yeah, Schofield actually codified it in a Bible, a version of the Bible where people could go and
Right.
read it. So he was kind of an evangelist, if you will, for this idea.
It has become incredibly popular in most churches, but to varying degrees. You know, as to how much faith they're willing to put into this idea that we're living in the end times or the end is about to come, etc. It's the book of Revelation, by the way. You know, I talked about this a little bit during the discussions on the biblical canon. Is such that almost didn't make the Bible.
Revelation?
Oh yeah, when the process of canonizing it, there were several early, you know, bishops and church fathers who just basically said, this is the ravings of a lunatic, and I don't see this as inspired writing. And, well, they were kind of overruled and kicked off the board, so to speak, with regard to how things were canonized. But we'll skip past that. But honestly, I mean, I've always been able to understand where Schofield and some of these others get their particular interpretation. When you have the writings in Revelation themselves are divided up all over the place into 7s. I mean, numerology is this huge thing in the Bible. So saying that the Bible itself could be divided up into epics is perfectly reasonable, provided you have all the other crazy presuppositions that lead to it. You've got letters to the 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls, etc. And so once you've bought into this significance,
symbolism, right?
This symbolic significance, then you can do the rest of it. The problem is that Revelation, like so many, it's like the TV psychics. It's so artsy and vague in what it's saying that it can be interpreted in a number of different ways.
Yeah.
And so you get a bunch of church leaders together who seem to think that they've interpreted it in the same way. And now all of a sudden you have a movement.
Right, and it's really taken off. And I think it plays into people's fears. I think when people see, a society that's struggling and a society that's in decay, or the society that's at war and things are not looking good, you might be tempted to sort of say, well, gosh, I wish I had an out, I wish I had an escape, I wish I could hedge my bets here.
Yeah.
And I think it plays into that sort of anxiety.
Well, it's a tool to allow people with no skills and no expertise to extort money from other people for no good reason. No matter how good things are going, you can always open up Revelation and say, don't get too comfortable. I realize we're living in an era of great health, and the life expectancy has been extended, and there's great prosperity, and food is abundant. But don't you dare get too comfortable, because the end is coming, and the devil wants you complacent.
Keep them afraid. Keep them afraid and keep them sending
Mail your checks or money. Yeah. Never mind.
So there were a couple very good quotes here, couple paragraphs that I'd like to read from an article called "Their Beliefs Are Bonkers, but They Are at the Heart of Power," which was written in 2004. But it provides some of the basics of the rapture stuff, and I'd like to hit that just to kind of, and then we have a caller. So let me take this, and we can take the caller.
Okay.
Just to kind of let everybody know where this Bible prophecy stuff comes from. In the United States, several million people have succumbed to an extraordinary delusion. In the 19th century, two immigrant preachers cobbled together a series of unrelated passages from the Bible to create what appears to be a consistent narrative. Jesus will return to earth when certain preconditions have been met. The first of these was the establishment of the State of Israel. The next involves Israel's occupation of the rest of the biblical lands, which includes most of the Middle East, and the rebuilding of the third temple at the site of the now occupied Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa mosques, which would piss off the Islam.
That's why we need to bomb Iran and everybody first, so that they're not around to be too upset.
Yeah, when
we
their
take
shrines
over
are
Dome of the Rock
when
again.
their shrines, when they consider equally as holy, are torn down. Anyway, the legions of the Antichrist will then be deployed against Israel, and the war will lead to a final showdown in the Valley of Armageddon. The Jews will either burn or convert to Christianity, and the Messiah will return to earth. What makes this story so appealing to Christian fundamentalists is that before the battle begins, all true believers, i.e. those that believe what they believe, will be lifted out of their clothes and wafted up to heaven during an event called the Rapture. Right? Not only do the worthy get to sit at the right hand of God, but they will be able to watch from their seats in their political and religious opponents being devoured by boils, sores, locusts, frogs, and during the 7 years of tribulation which will follow.
I kind of pictured John Hagee's fat ass in a lawn chair on a cloud with like a six-pack of non-alcoholic beer, just watching the rest of us get eaten by a locust.
Right. Well, I had a different thought. I thought, well, gosh, if Hagee's a bit overweight, maybe he should lose a little weight so he can be swept up in the clouds. If he really believed this stuff, he'd
if you're going to be swept up out of your clothes, nobody wants to see you naked. That's for sure.
Especially not in a lawn chair sitting over top of you.
These are the same people who believe that when you're raptured up and you're going to get a new and perfect body.
Right. So this is pretty crazy. But that's kind of the gist of it, is this notion of a rapture, all these events, and there's a website, there's lots of websites dedicated to this, but there's one in particular that's just over the top. You go look at raptureready.com. That website is tracking on a daily basis various indices that they think are the signs of the apocalypse. So corruption in the government, or kids picking their nose, or whatever little index they come up with. They come up with a total that's coming up for the day, and then they add it up. And this is supposedly gives you a UV meter on when the rapture is going to come. And this thing has been going on for years. There's actually there's actually businesses out there that are supposed to deliver messages after the rapture happens. So you can pay them money to have a message delivered to your atheist uncle or your atheist son. Screw you, you are wrong. I don't know. It's laughable from my standpoint, but at a deeper level, it's very disconcerting, because these people believe this stuff. They're paying money. They're invested in it. They're willing. I
wish I had thought of it.
They're willing to steer the government based on this crap. And it's mind-boggling.
I guarantee you, I promise, I will never, well, I can't do that. For as long as I'm an atheist, if you'd like, you can send me your stuff along with money. And if you're ever raptured, I'll make sure it's distributed to whichever of your relatives weren't raptured, along with a personal message from you that explains how you knew ahead of time you were going to be raptured. I can take care of it because I'm not going to be raptured. We both believe that. I mean, you believe it because I don't deserve to be, and I believe it because I think you're nuts. But I'm not going to be raptured, so I can watch out for you.
Right.
It's a hell of a business opportunity.
Right. So you see bumper stickers that say, come the rapture, this car will be empty, or this car will be unmanned. And our response is, rapture is a world without religious nuts.
Yep.
Bye.
Yeah, there's a gentleman who emailed me. We've been having a discussion, and he's like, well, what sort of evidence would it take to get you to believe that a God exists? And I was like, well, it depends on what you're going to define God as. And I think there are certain, it's not like I have special criteria for the God hypothesis. I have pretty much similar. I mean, granted, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but it's no different than the sort of evidence that would convince me of any other thing. Tracy likes to point out that something either manifests or it doesn't. If it doesn't, it is irrelevant. If it is, then there's some sort of evidence that you can present for it. That might work. We've talked about messages in the sky that are simultaneously read by different people in different languages, independently verifiable, confirmable, that kind of thing. Martin's mentioned, hey, if a road to Damascus experience was good enough for Saul, it should be good enough for me too. I'd say that, if you believe in God and believe that prayer works, it should be pretty easy for everybody, all of you Christians, in addition to sending me money to watch your stuff until you're raptured, or after you're raptured, you could all get together and pray that whatever it would take for God to convince me that God exists, that God would do that. Because even if I can't come up with an answer that's suitable, surely your God knows what would convince me.
That's right.
Are you saying that your God is so weak and feeble that he can't come up with some way to convince me that he exists? Am I just, I'm not worthy? My soul's not worth being saved? What's the deal here?
Well, isn't it also true that that there's some quote in the Bible that says if two of you get together and pray sincerely in my name, it'll come to pass?
Yeah. So, wherever two or more you
I
gather
think
in my
these
name.
Christians are just very selfish. The two of them can't get together and
pray
create
for world peace. Yeah. Nothing fails like prayer. I don't care that you prayed and found your car keys. I don't care that you prayed and at some later time somebody benefited in some way. There's no evidence that prayer does anything. And if you wanted to prove different, all you'd have to do is get together and pray for God to do whatever it takes to convince me or somebody else. Pick somebody that's more important than me. Pick Don. Pick Richard Dawkins. Yeah. Let's all get together. Well, you guys get together. I'm not going to waste my time. But all you Christians get together and pray that whatever it would take to convince Richard Dawkins that God is real, that God would go ahead and do this. Matter of fact, if God's purpose was to actually convince people that he exists and loves them and wants them to join him forever, whisked away in the clouds to paradise and rapture, wouldn't convincing the world's most prominent, outspoken atheist, and wouldn't that be the perfect opportunity? And the reason I say that is because whatever it would take to convince Richard Dawkins, I'm pretty sure that he could go come down here and express to me clearly what it took and what happened, and probably convince me.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Richard's going to go anything short of evidence and reason, and I don't think Hitchens would, or Dennett, or anybody else.
Or us.
I don't understand it. I mean, you've got Ray Comfort and others who go on TV and say, I can prove to you that God exists in 30 seconds, and then they give some BS argument that's nonsense. And then when you call them on it, they say, well, the other thing you can do, why didn't you start with this, is hit your knees and with all sincerity ask God to reveal himself, and he will. Well, what makes you think that I didn't do that? Do you think that in the course of the 25 plus years that I was a Christian and in that fading away period where my religious belief faded, that I didn't do that?
They're trying to use the no true Scotsman fallacy on you, right? Or you couldn't possibly have been a good Christian if you're an atheist now, right?
Yeah. It's impossible for anybody who was once a true Christian to be an atheist. Okay, I agree, because when you say you're using it as a false conversion, because I think all the conversions are false. I think you either bought into a delusion or you've deluded yourself or whatever. But this idea that we had never done that, or at least in my case, it's not like I just chose to be an atheist, or I got fed up with Christianity. I mean, my specific goal was to do what God wanted, or what I thought God wanted. It was to fulfill the obligation that I had as a Christian to lead other people to Christ, to come up with the best explanations to convince the atheist. And what I found in the process of studying is that I couldn't even continue to convince myself. It is, the more you examine it, the more you actually care about what's true, the more you actually read the Bible, the less believable it is. Sorry, that's the truth.
That's been my experience. Yeah, the more I learn about it, the crazier it sounds. Let's take a bunch of calls.
We got full lines and about 20 minutes left, so let's see if we can crank through some calls. Is it Phil?
Yeah.
How you doing, Phil?
It's fine, guys. How about yourself?
Pretty good. What do you got for us?
I got a tip of the hat and wag of the finger type thing going here. I don't know if y'all read the paper today, but there's a huge article in here about Christian Zionists in Israel.
Okay. I didn't happen to see that, so I just happened to pick the topic on a day that they chose to write about it in the paper.
Yeah, and it's by a guy named Robert Gee, who's an international staffer, so I don't know if this is syndicated or not. If you'll let me read the first two paragraphs.
Sure, go ahead.
Get a feel for what's going on here. Charred pages of the New Testament are mixed among trash and weeds at the edge of a vacant lot next to a synagogue in this religious working-class suburb of Tel Aviv. As many as 200 Hebrew versions of the New Testament were burned in a bonfire here last month, according to police, allegedly by a group of ultra-orthodox Jewish students. So that's my tip of the hat.
Yep.
Well, I heard about that, yeah.
Yeah. So,
although I'd wag a finger at him, really, but...
Well, I tip of the hat because I'm trying to get Christian Zionists in this country to understand that Jewish, ultra-Orthodox Jews don't necessarily want their proselytizing going on in their country.
Yeah. Oh, I'm with you there.
And I think that if you somehow manifest that rift between these two organizations, it'll cut back on this ridiculous foreign policy we got with regard to Israel.
Yeah,
well,
my wag of the...
A lovely sentiment. I hope it can happen, but I'm doubtful it will happen.
Well, I'm doubtful too, and here's why. Here's my wag of the finger thing.
Okay.
Barack Obama appeared before AIPAC earlier this, month, a couple of weeks ago anyways, and he told the crowd there that he wanted to see Jerusalem united under Israel control, which basically set off a firestorm among the Muslim populations of the Middle East, which I thought this was ridiculous. Why would you fan the flames of this bogus, war, this trumped up, ridiculous war we're having with these infidels? I mean, this is crazy.
Yes,
I'm with you.
Yeah.
My wag of the finger was for a slightly different reason, and that's because I consider book burning to be not only wasteful, but a pretty childish and ignorant way to make your case. All it does is demonstrate that those ultra-Orthodox Jews are just as fearful and religiously crazy as the Christians that are over there trying to spread Christianity to the Jews. It's a silly... I mean, at least they could have gathered up all those Bibles and, I don't know, had a barbecue, used the fuel for something. That I could have supported. But book burning for the sake of book burning, you just look stupid.
Yeah.
Well, that may be true.
But on the Obama thing, I think this sort of underscores the fact that this Middle East politics is messy business. And, I've spent a whole show on it. I'm just barely scratching the surface.
Oh, yeah.
You definitely have to have a very good understanding of history. You have to have a very good understanding of the religions involved, the viewpoints. And, a statement like Obama made that you just talked about is sort of putting a stake in the ground. It's sort of saying we're going to treat something a certain way. And, if someone doesn't understand the implications of that, you're asking for trouble.
Well, it's just bold-faced pandering is what it is.
Yeah.
So let me just, before I let you go, Don, I think you made a mistake with regard to our aid to Israel.
Okay.
$108 billion. I think that may be a cumulative total over about 10 years. It averages around $5 to $10 billion a year.
Okay.
And, man, I want to get together with you, buddy, and play some pool. So I'll let you go on that note.
I'm there all the time. Just drop me an email, Phil. Thanks.
All right, dude.
We'll have to double-check that.
On that, we'll go ahead and jump over to this other caller real quick, because I think, is it Tim?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
How you doing, Tim?
Good. Just flipping through your show. Hadn't seen that in a while. I'd like to preface saying I think John Hagee is an absolute idiot. And
But he's a powerful idiot.
But to point out, these guys, Hagee and Van Impe, that are all TV preachers, are only representing a small portion of the traditional belief of a non-pre-tribulation rapture. I think those guys that pull a lot of quotes out and try to really make a pre-tribulation rapture are really doing a disservice to everybody, because it is ridiculous.
I wouldn't say small portion. Looking at the religious demographics, there's a significant portion, but I freely admit it doesn't represent everybody.
Because all these TV preachers, but
no, it's not about TV preachers. It's not about TV preachers. I mean, well, in a way, it kind of is. I apologize for this in advance. The average Christian is a particularly, you're a moron. And I'll explain this because I don't mean it.
But I'll pay you $100 for Trivial Pursuit or Jeopardy, anything you want, if you want to call me average.
No, I'm not talking about.
My IQ would probably crush you like a grape, but if you want to go ahead and do insults, put your money where your mouth is, homie.
Okay, fine. If you want to compare IQ scores, we could do that. I find them completely irrelevant, but that's not my point, and I wasn't
talking. You're going to call me
I didn't call you.
Then put your money up.
I didn't call you anything.
Well, that's what I was clarifying. And you jumped around it for 15 seconds, and now you're saying, no, you're not talking about me. So go ahead and just make a point and get away from your slander.
Okay, you are a moron. Thank you. When I said the average Christian is a moron, I was going to clarify this, that it didn't have anything to do with intelligence, or maybe not even necessarily knowledge. The point that the reason that I would use the word moron is because they don't really understand what they believe or why. And this is where the problem, which I was going to agree with you with regard to televangelists, is that they get their beliefs without any critical examination on their own part from these authority figures. So when you look at the demographics that demonstrate how pervasive a particular religious group is, for example, if you look at demographics, Southern Baptists have covered the South, despite the fact that you'll find people of all religious beliefs there. When people profess what their religious belief is, most of them, and I would think that as somebody who is a Christian, you would probably agreed with this if you hadn't, driven me to hang up on you. Most of them are really kind of, they believe and they're going through the motions, but they don't consider what their beliefs are. They're getting fed those beliefs. It's not really any sort of thing that they truly understand. And that's why I would consider them to be morons, because I don't have a lot of respect for people who are sheep, who don't bother to critically examine. If you've thought about your beliefs, if you've come to the conclusion that a God exists, and you whether through divine revelation or whether some argument has convinced you, that's great. And you may be vastly more intelligent than I am. I couldn't give a damn about IQ scores. And a new study that came out this week claimed that the higher your IQ score, the less likely you are to believe in God. Christians are all upset about it. I'm upset about it. That's a stupid claim. The study's methodology is horribly broken. Intelligence or intelligence quotient has absolutely nothing to do with it. Now, I would say that knowledge, education, those things seem to be very relevant. It's one of the reasons why you find a lower propensity for belief in personal gods among, let's say, the National Academy of Sciences. It seems to be the case that the better one understands reality, the better one understands the natural world, the less likely you are to accept supernatural explanations. And the less knowledgeable you are about the way the natural world works, the more likely you are to accept supernatural explanations. So you may be able to kick my ass at Trivial Pursuit. You may have a higher IQ. I really don't care either way. I don't know that either one's true. It doesn't bother me, because people have asked lots and lots of times, what's your IQ, or what do you think about? I think IQ tests are biased and somewhat useless. To me, it doesn't matter what your potential is. It matters more what you do with it. And I don't know that the IQ tests actually measure potential in a fair and unbiased way. I'd much rather care about, tell me what you believe and why. Can you put together a logical, reasonable argument about this? Now, you called in to point out that we're not talking about the majority. Well, I agree. If you took the majority of Christians, that's not who we're talking about. But it's not a quiet minority. It is a vocal minority that is a significant portion of the population. And it's because
very
there
powerful, disproportionately powerful.
It's because there are sheep who are part of this. They're being controlled, manipulated by voices from the pulpit. They are shoveling their paychecks to people who they think are promoting something that is going to benefit everybody. They think they are doing what God wants. I know that this does not necessarily represent the majority of Christians, but if it doesn't represent you, don't call the Atheist program and get pissed off and talk about how much smarter you are. Go to those other churches and explain why they've departed from the doctrine that you consider to be true. I'm not the one who can fix it. We're just talking about the way things are.
Right, right. So I think, in the little notes we get from the call screener, I think he was trying to make the point that the premillennial interpretation is not necessarily well supported in the Bible. Well, which interpretation is? I mean, how this whole thing is cobbled together from a bunch of crazy stuff, right? And there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that you can put together in various ways and come up with all sorts of things. It's a Rorschach test for the morally challenged, I've called it. Yeah. You can interpret it any way you want. Gog and Magog can be over in Russia, right, which is how Lindsay thought in his books, or he can be over in the Middle East. 100 years from now, if we're fighting over territory in Alaska and whatever, it's going to be the Eskimos. Gog and Magog are the Eskimos, and it's a bunch of bullshit. It's a bunch of interpretation, a bunch of spin, and it might make sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to someone who hasn't bought into all this crap. Right?
Oh, and to be fair, just for clarification, the reason that I went ahead and included you as a moron and hung up on you, and I apologize for speaking directly to you now that I've hung up, but I want this to be clear to everybody else, is because you seem to think it was important that you might be able to beat me at Trivial Pursuit or might have a higher IQ score. And what I consider important is truth. And if you believe in God, then you should be able to present a logically coherent argument along with some empirical evidence to justify that belief. And if you can't, and you still believe, then you are a moron.
Anyway, let's take another call.
Al, how you doing?
Oh, good. How are you guys?
Good. How you doing? Oh, I just asked, but go ahead.
I had a question. What did the people do in the past when there has been claims of a rapture or end of times, and then it doesn't happen? I mean, what
they
do
pick
they
a new
do?
date. Seriously, that's what happens. Either they pick a new date, they commit suicide, mass suicide, or they fade away and then resurface a little while later with a new cult group. I mean, that's kind of the way it goes.
And this has been going on for centuries. This
Yeah.
has been a very popular sort of thing.
And it goes on right now. There's a group in Russia that buried themselves in a cave waiting for the end of the world. And, of course, their leader started hitting himself in the head with a board. And it's just, I mean...
And we're not joking.
Well, I know. It just boggles my mind that, if you're going to think something, if you're going to take something that's serious, and then the event doesn't come to pass, then, change your mind. Perhaps do something, like that.
I don't have a...
Well, maybe this guy that I've been listening to is a charlatan and has been taking my money, and I should perhaps go off and
You would think.
and get a new life.
I don't have the website handy. We'll have to look it up and maybe add it to the credits at some point. There's at least one website, if not several, that list all of the various predictions of the end of everything throughout time, along with dates and who made it. I'm pretty sure you can Google it.
I have that in my pile somewhere.
It's pretty good.
And speaking of website, what is you guys' website?
Atheist-community.org for the ACA, atheist-experience.com for the TV show, and several others. Oh, he actually has a list, but we're running out of time.
Put it on your screen, on the screen?
It is right there. They just changed it.
Okay. On the topic of failed predictions, I guess I want to throw in two things. One
Great.
is Jehovah's Witnesses are
there it
pretty
is.
famous for that. They've had a number of them, 4 or 5, where they picked a date and didn't happen, and it's like...
Yeah.
And not surprisingly, the Jehovah's Witnesses have a high turnover of people who believe in their stuff.
And evidently, if you believe in crazy stuff, some of them bury themselves underground and then come back and haunt you later. Oh, wait, that was Poltergeist, sorry.
Okay.
All right.
Another
All right.
thing
Well, I
is...
appreciate it, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Al.
you.
Appreciate the call.
Another thing is, I'd really like to ask these 25% of Americans who thought the world was going to end in 2007. Why were you wrong? Or why? What? Wake up and smell reality. Anyway. But go ahead.
Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
There's like 3 minutes left.
Okay.
Is this Thomas?
Yes, hello.
How you doing, Thomas?
I'm doing good. I just want to make a quick comment. I'm not trying to take up much of your time.
Sure.
But last week I was watching your show, and you were talking about outer space and Big Bang. You were arguing with somebody, and y'all were going off of that and everything. And all I'm saying is that you've never been to outer space, but you're taking people's word off stuff, to put facts into everything, And that's just like how God is. You just take the word. You take the word from that.
You're saying that there's just as much evidence for God as there is for outer space?
I'm saying you don't know that for a fact because you've never been to outer space. You're just going off word, aren't you? And stuff that you read.
No, I'm going off evidence.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Evidence from someone else because you've never personally been out there. That's what we're doing. I'm sorry. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We're going off evidence that people have gotten in the past from the Bible, and we're believing in that. Go ahead.
I could go to outer space.
Yeah, but you haven't, so that's what I'm saying. You're just going off word for right now.
I haven't been to Australia, but I believe it exists. Are you saying that it's just as unjustified for me to believe Australia exists? I'm saying that you can't really take something else down or take someone. I'm not saying you're doing that, but you can't tell somebody else that it might not be true just because you don't have the facts for it. Because you don't have the facts for it either. You have to go and rely on someone else to tell you that. No, the facts are available to anybody, and the investigation is available to anybody. What are the facts to support the existence of a God?
The Bible and the situations that happen in the Bible.
Have you heard of the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or any of that?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so how do you know your God's real and the one in the Quran's not?
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that that's the only God or whatever. Or I'm just saying that I have faith in that. And just like I'm going off of the word, that's what you're going off of. Somebody else's word, the moon and all that is real.
No. Gosh. I could jump on a plane and fly to Australia. I can talk to people in Australia. I've been there. We have sent astronauts to outer space. The empirical evidence exists for all of these. It's not just I took someone's word for it. It's not just like I read it in the Bible, therefore it's true. You can investigate independently. It is supported by our understanding of reality. And if you think that belief in God, because you read it in a book, is just as justified as belief in outer space, you're in the moron club too. We'll be back again next week on the Atheist Experience. You can email tv@atheistexperience.com. Join us for dinner at El Arroyo. We'll see you next week.